Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen stories. What would you do if an HOA Karen stole your $500,000 home via foreclosure and then taking it away from you for just $50,000? Let's dive right into today's video. And the first one is titled, "Neighbor and his friends kept stealing my packages, so I got them arrested and evicted," from r/petty revenge. So I had a problem neighbor for so many years. He would terrorize the area, he was a drug addict and dealer, which is his business, but don't make it my issue, thus we always had unsavory people popping up, breaking into houses and cars, stealing packages, etc. And yes, I know it's to do with him, because he had previously admitted that it was his friends doing it, and I've seen CCTV from other neighbors showing his friends damaging cars, etc. He has stolen bank cards that came in the mail, makes the most obnoxious amount of noise that wakes me up, and his friends/fiends almost always ring my bell in the dead of night around 2 or 3 a.m. I have shouted at them so many times and have argued with him too. My neighbor has also been in prison multiple times for various things, including very serious crimes, so he would do well to keep his head low as a free man, you would think. We live in a house converted into apartments where there are 4 apartments and a main area downstairs to walk through / where mail goes. He always leaves the main door open, which I'd ask him not to, so his friends can come and go. Sometimes they would kick the door down and trash the area. Whenever I would get a package and I wasn't home, the crappy couriers would leave the package unattended in the front garden or the main area outside my door, despite me instructing them not to. My package would be stolen by my neighbor / his friends in seconds. This went on for years, and when confronted, he would deny it, but I knew it was him. Other 2 apartments are old people who I'm friendly with who also dislike him. The issue is I never had any proof of it. I once called the police after he wrote a note to me apologizing for his friends stealing my package, but that went nowhere. This time, I was not gonna let my over 250 pounds worth of stolen packages go amiss. So I put up a camera in the main area, I saved the boxes from some other packages and placed an apple and some plastic bags in there for weight, set them outside, and within 5 minutes they were stolen by his friend who had not seen the camera. Gotcha. I called the police, who commended me on my setup skills, and they came over, but by the time they got there, the guy had left the building with packed bags that were definitely filled with drugs to sell. They told me they would look out for him. A few weeks after, I get a call from the police about it. I also tell them I'm absolutely certain he sells Class A drugs and has been terrorizing the area, and they tell me they would pay me a visit. 5 days go by, and at 7 a.m. I get a call from the same officer asking me to open the door quickly and quietly. I do, and she tells me to go inside, but not before I see about 15 plainclothes officers hiding behind a wall. I look through the peephole and they all storm inside, boot down his door and arrest everyone inside. It was basically a crack house, as well as seize boxes of drugs. This was all caught on the camera I bought, so I sent the footage to the landlord. The police also gets in touch with the landlord, and thus my neighbor is evicted on top of it. This was a month ago, none of his mail has been picked up, and I'm getting a lot of joy out of this. Moral of the story, keep your hands to yourself. And yeah guys, I'm curious, did you ever have any neighbors that stole your packages? And if so, did you confront them? Or what happened in the end? Let us know in the comments. And while you're at it, it would be super amazing if we could reach 1000 likes in the video, because that helps me tremendously. Thank you so much. This one is titled, "HOA Karen stole my $500K house via foreclosure and rebought it at an auction for $50,000. So I bought a house in a suburban neighborhood around 20 years ago, back before the housing crisis and when houses were actually cheap. Nowadays it's worth around $500K. I was 26 and had recently gotten married to my long-term girlfriend, who we will call Loretta. Loretta and I had been staying at my parents' place, but we obviously wanted a place of our own, so when I discovered a house up for sale in a quaint suburban neighborhood, I was quick to put down a mortgage for it. We moved in quickly and began to make it our home. Loretta dealt with all the decorating, which made the house look way better than what it would be if I had a say in it, and I dealt with renovations. It was an older style house. No worries though, we kept the old design as Loretta adores that sort of thing, but of course because it was built a while ago, there were some things that needed to be fixed. For example, the guest's bathroom toilet was sinking into the floor and I had to fix it so it wouldn't completely collapse. The point is, we really made it our home. Here, we raised our son and daughter, Jacob and Alyssa. We hosted family dinners, cookouts and barbecues and other parties like that. We became close friends with our amazing neighbors. The place really became a home. I hope to make more memories in the house, especially in the future, when my son or daughter would eventually get married and have children of their own and they could bring them over to our house for playdates, but unfortunately, fate had other plans. My neighborhood has been run by an HOA for almost as long as I've been here. I joined because honestly, I didn't know any better and the benefits sounded great. I mean, they really were for a while. The HOA dealt with trash and recycling, issues in the road like potholes and such, and things like that. Whenever we had an issue, more so with neighborhood things than with each other, though sometimes some disagreement did occur, they dealt with it. A decade after I had moved into the neighborhood, the HOA's main body was replaced by a newer group of people. The previous group had been an older bunch of people, and while they were loved and respected by the community, many of us believed they deserved to rest instead of managing all this HOA stuff. A new group was chosen in a bit of a landslide election. Nobody else wanted to run in many of the roles, and the only roles with genuine competition were the vice president and treasurer. The point is, a new group was elected, people who were around my age. I had a bad feeling about the president though. I think most people did, but I didn't really talk to anyone about it other than Loretta for fear of sounding like a gossip monger. We will call this person Karen, as most people would. She was generally nasty and a rude person. Most of my neighbors were not fans of her since she was always putting people down and always believed that she was in the right no matter what. Still, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt and thought that maybe her stubborn personality would aid in getting things done in the neighborhood. However, it was clear that she was no help at all. The most significant thing she did in relation to this story was raise the prices of the fees. Whereas before the monthly fee for the HOA was around $200, the new board raised it triple the price to $600. I was a little shocked at the insane price increase, but the new treasurer justified the fee as a way for the HOA to fund new community centers and activities. Though I was unsure about it, I obviously wanted the benefits for my family, so I continued paying anyway. Now, to truly start the story, I've got to talk about the time I lost my credit card. As you can see, I put lost in quotation marks. I consider myself a pretty fit guy and I like to do as much as I can to maintain my physical health. My job in construction has made me physically strong and I maintain my physique through healthy eating and just being active. I don't even care about my physique so much that I subject myself to those crazy workout routines or diets you see a lot of young people trying nowadays. I typically focus on different hobbies like playing tennis, running, or biking. It's mostly tennis and biking that I do now that I'm a little older, so biking is how this story started. Every day at around 6 in the afternoon I bike around my neighborhood. I don't have a separate pair of clothes to bike with, often wearing just a pair of cargo shorts and a t-shirt. I had to head to the ATM as well, so I decided to bring my wallet with me. I put it in my pockets and headed off for the bank. It took me 20 minutes to bike to the bank, but when I got there I realized that I did not have my wallet at all. I panicked and immediately biked back the way I came, retracing my steps, but I couldn't find anything. My neighborhood is generally peaceful, so I didn't think anyone stole it, but I decided to lock all my cards and order new ones, not wanting to risk it. Well, it turns out I did not need to do any of that. A day later, I received a call from the police station informing me that they had found my wallet, having identified me through my driver's license. I headed over, and after filling out the paperwork, I got my wallet back. Of course, the cards were practically useless since I had already locked them and ordered new ones, but I was glad to know that nothing was stolen. But this was when the trouble began. So our HOA had a website through which we paid our monthly dues. I set up for an automatic payment with my credit card just so I could have some peace of mind and not wonder whether I have paid it or not. For a while, this was a blessing, but after I lost my wallet, the situation turned on me. Because I forgot that the old cards were not working anymore essentially. 6 months after I'd lost my wallet, I came home to see a piece of paper taped on my door. It turned out to be an eviction notice and a warning of foreclosure. I saw the foreclosure and thought that the message had been sent from my bank, which didn't make sense to me since I paid off my mortgage a while ago, but upon closer inspection I realized the foreclosure was coming from my HOA. The next day, I confronted the HOA board about the foreclosure and they explained that they had made the decision to foreclose my house in order to pay off the debt I had accumulated to the association. I was confused and insisted that I had paid all of my dues on time each and every month, and they argued with me while I kept insisting that they had made a mistake. The treasurer revealed to me that it showed that I had not made any payments in the last 6 months. I was shocked and logged into my account from my phone just to make sure. Well, it turns out they were actually in the right. I had not been paying my dues for months. I called my bank to ask why that happened. Essentially, they told me that when I had locked my card and replaced it, I ended my automatic payments to the HOA, so for the past year, I had not been paying my $600 due at all. Plus other fees had accumulated along with the missing dues, so my debt had built up to a total of around $7,000. While it doesn't seem like a lot of money, it was not something I could just cough up in time to prevent the HOA from taking my house. I tried explaining my situation to the HOA, insisting that I genuinely did not know about the lack of payments, but the board refused to listen to me, claiming it to be a sob story I was making up on the spot just to spare myself. I was immediately distraught, and it was clear that I would not be able to cough up the money needed to save my home. In the end, my family and I ended up having to move back in with my wife's parents, and the house was gone. I was absolutely heartbroken. 20 years of memories were all gone. I was angry at myself mostly for not checking. Just one glance at my account would have saved me from this entire mess, but I was also angry at the HOA for not cutting me a little slack and for not giving me a warning at least. I understand that it was my fault that the payments weren't being made, but I didn't think it was exactly fair for the HOA to give me zero warning about the fact that I was not paying any of my dues, especially since it was a mistake. Before you say it, the HOA sends emails and texts. I scoured through all of them and I didn't find any sort of warning message in regards to my dues. Though I was upset about what happened, I knew that the only thing I could do was move on. I began working extra hard to make up for everything that happened. Luckily, my children are both in college, so my in-laws were not too burdened by our presence, but they were sad when they heard what happened. A few months later, an old neighbor of mine texted me. We were not close friends per se, but we talked frequently, and I had told him about the situation with the HOA when we were moving out. He texted me asking if I wanted to meet up for coffee, as he had some things he wanted to talk about. I was a little confused since, as I said, we were not that close, but he was still a nice guy, so I said yes to the request anyway. We met up a few days later. We caught up, and when I asked him about how everything was, he admitted to me that his house had also been up for foreclosure. That was, he revealed, the reason why he wanted to talk to me. What he told me left me in shock. Essentially, a lot of people, especially the older folks living in the neighborhood, were being kicked out of their houses due to these HOA foreclosures. I asked him why his house specifically was getting foreclosed, and he said that there was a completely new fee that he wasn't aware of. It had left him in debt, just like me, and that the HOA filed for foreclosure when he hadn't been able to pay. As for everyone else, he was not sure, but he said that it was most likely the same issues we had, aka unknown debt. He then told me that the foreclosed houses were being sold at auctions. I then asked if my house had been sold in an auction, and he confirmed it did. He had heard that it had been sold for $50,000. Immediately, I was suspicious of the whole affair. My situation was definitely partially my fault, but there was something strange about these other ones. It was all too similar to be a coincidence. A bunch of foreclosures due to a convenient amount of unpaid debt. After meeting with my friend, I decided to approach a lawyer about this situation. And yeah guys, just to interject here, if you would be in this situation, what would you have done? It seems like OP just took everything as it went, and it seemed like he just accepted his fate. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, after I had explained everything, my lawyer said that HOAs were legally required to warn their members about unpaid dues and debts 3 times before they can officially call for foreclosure. By not warning me of my debt, as I mentioned, I checked the emails and messaging system we had, they had technically broken the law. I decided then to take the case to court. It was for myself, but it was also for the others who lost their homes to the HOA's foreclosure nonsense too. If this happened to me illegally, who's to say the same illegal stuff was not happening to anyone else? I will spare you all the grueling details of the court case, but essentially, I sued the HOA for wrongful foreclosure. The lawsuit revealed that the HOA had faked warning emails to prove they had given enough warnings to justify foreclosure. The lawsuit ended up opening an investigation against the HOA and their recent trend of foreclosures and house auctions. It turned out that the Karen president and the treasurer were in on the scheme together and got my house for cheap. While the HOA had a decent amount of funding from fundraisers and reimbursements, the two of them were not satisfied with their budget. So then they began the foreclosure scheme in order to make a quick buck on vulnerable people by adding new and unnecessary dues they gave no warning about to force people to accumulate debt. Part of the money was used for the HOA, but most of it was just to line their own pockets. A lot of people were extremely upset by this, me included. After all, we had put in so much time and effort into getting these houses as well as truly making them our homes. And all of that was taken away from us by two greedy snobs. Miraculously though, some people's homes hadn't been sold in the auction yet, so they were able to get their houses back. Others, however, like me, were unlucky. With me and so many others, our houses were quickly sold at auction and were now being sold for insanely high prices, much higher than what we bought them for back then. It pains me that I will most likely never have a house that nice again, no matter how hard I work. However, as sad as this is, there is a bit of a silver lining here. Obviously, for their crimes, Karen and the treasurer got thrown in jail for a pretty long sentence. The HOA board was completely dissolved and replaced with a group of younger members who were generally thought to be nice folks in the neighborhood. My family and I have finally found a place to stay that is not my in-laws, and it will certainly never compare to our old house, but it is a townhome in a quaint little neighborhood. Obviously, we don't own it, since at that point we might as well just buy a house itself, so we are renting, but the landlord is a sweet lady. This time around, I made sure there was no HOA in the neighborhood. As much as the HOA was helpful over the years, it eventually became our downfall, and I don't want to risk something else like that happening again after we've just recovered again. Although I'm still heartbroken over the loss of our home and the way in which we lost it, I'm glad that I was able to expose HOA corruption and put a stop to their nonsense before they ruined more people's lives. I'm happy where I am now with my family, and I'm sure we will make wonderful memories in this new house. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. This happened several years ago during my, 31 female, tenure as a server at a restaurant in a decently touristy area. I have an entire smorgasbord of wild stories, local politicians getting huffy at not getting special treatment, 90-year-old men threatening to spank me, two lawyer parents arguing why their 16-year-old daughter should be allowed to drink as though it were a courtroom, etc. Along, of course, with your average restaurant no one matured past high school work environment. Without getting too specific about where I was, the restaurant was somewhat dog-themed in the name and like two of the decorations, but outside of that, it was largely just a pub-style restaurant. But with our name, most folks expected us to be a dog-friendly establishment. Unfortunately, shortly before I started working there, the health department had begun to crack down on restaurants in the area allowing dogs in, which was against the health code. As such, in an effort to live up to our name, management chucked off an arm and a leg to get permission to have a dog-friendly section on the patio. Part of the permission came with several rules like dogs cannot sit in chairs or on tables, or dogs must be on leash or in carriage. Or dogs must have separate entrance and exit. Stuff that, if you sit down and think about it, makes sense for protecting people who may have an allergy or a phobia or any other reason to avoid a dog in public. So the following happened shortly before my 20th birthday in the middle of summer. It was cloudy, it was humid, and bugs were flying. And absolutely no one wanted to sit on the patio. I was a hostess that day, and I felt really bad for my patio server who was not getting any business. Until, lo and behold, a middle-aged woman appears. I will call her Unentitled Woman/Wife, or UEW for short. UEW, hi, my husband and I have a dog and we're hoping to sit out on the patio. Me, great. Just give me a second and I'll get you set up in the dog-friendly section. I collect their menus and lead them outside to find her husband, who I will lovingly refer to as Entitled Chair Guy or ECG, along with a cute elderly beagle already sitting in the dog-free section. For the record, all the patio tables had little signs on them denoting them as dog-friendly or dog-free to make it easy on people. So this ECG had been using his eyes could have easily solved our first encounter before it began. Me in my chippiest customer service voice, hi sir, just so you know, you're in the dog-free section right now, but if you move over just one table, you'll be in the dog-friendly section and we can get you started. ECG looks up from his phone and his dark beady eyes meet mine. ECG in a seething tone, Are you serious? Now, I'm a bit taken aback at the hostility at such a basic request, but I'm no novice in crappy customers. So I repeat the rules and explain it's due to the restaurant needing to follow the health code. He continues to protest and his wife jumps in and starts pleading that it's just one table, why don't we just move? And now I feel even worse for her. Finally, he throws his hands up in the air and shouts, "Fine, but if my dog gets hit by a car, are you the one I sue?" Context: the dog-friendly section was adjacent to the sidewalk, which was adjacent to the road, so if you were gonna be hit by a car, it was technically the most likely spot. It also had never happened in the restaurant's multi-decade lifespan. At this point, my irritation meter is firmly in the red as I realize he's one of those entitled people, the ones who spit and threaten when they don't get their way. I shoot and even smile and say, "That's probably a question for my manager." ECG, or your attorney. He really thinks that he got me with that zinger as I'm setting him down in the dog-friendly section, but really, I'm just hiding laughs, because these are the most pathetic kinds of people we serve. I just warn his server that he's a douche and go on with my day. I later bring out a bowl of water for the dog because it's hot and gross and the poor thing should not be dehydrated, you know? It was standard practice for us to bring dogs water while their owners ate. I set it down and immediately ECG, "Is that tap water or bottled water?" Me fighting the urge to deadpan, "It's tap water, sir. Would you like me to go out and buy bottled water?" At that point, the dog begins drinking and ECG slams his hand on the table and shouts, "Well, it's too late now. Let's better hope it's not poisoned." Now, the guy has me wondering if his dog is up to date on its shots or if he is an anti-vaxxer. His server told me that he later poured out the water. I have no clue if she was referring to his water or his dog's water, but he had loudly complained that there were bugs in it. I'd like to remind you, dear reader, that it was a disgusting, humid, muggy summer day, and this man decided to eat outside. While I do understand the initial revulsion at seeing a bug in your meal or drink, he was in the bug's world, dear reader, not ours, and we had no control over that. We still replaced his water though. About 10 minutes later, his entree is ordered, he and his wife are eating an appetizer, the dog is chilling and some other mad soul walks inside and asks to sit on the patio. Just to be petty, I put him in the chair ECG had originally commandeered. But then I look over, ECG had his beagle in his lap while he was eating his food. If you remember from about 10 years ago when I was explaining some of the mandates we got from the health department, one of them was, dogs cannot sit in chairs or on tables. And while some of you might contest it, the dog being in his lap constituted being in a chair in the health department's eyes. Now, I didn't want to deal with this, to be honest. But I knew that between me and his server, on the 1 in a million chance that a health official just happened to walk by and see us breaking the rules, one of us would get thrown under the bus. So as UEW goes inside to order a drink from the bar, I slap on my customer service voice and stroll over to their table and say, "Hi sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to tell you that it's unfortunately against the health code for your dog to be in the chair with you." ECG goes silent for a few moments, simmering until, "Show me the health code." Me, "Excuse me?" ECG, "I'm not doing anything unless you show me the health code." At this point, my patience is waver thin. This man is finding ways to push all the most annoying buttons rather than just following a basic rule and letting all of us get on with our days. Rather than continue with him and risk losing my temper, I go back inside to cool down and find a manager. I find one, we go to the office and she prints out the list of rules emailed to us by the health department. Then she holds up the paper to me and says, "Now this can go one of two ways. I can take this down to him and you never have to see him again, or you can take this down to him and get that smug, satisfied feeling of telling an a-hole you were right." This is where I may have erred, dear reader, for you see, I really didn't want to see this mother trucker again. His beady black eyes, his thin greased black hair, his rubbery white skin, the man looked like death himself. Stoking that fire to sate my ego could go terribly wrong, foreshadowing. But I really wanted that smug, satisfied feeling of telling an a-hole I was right. And what can I say, I was not even 20. Mustering my courage, I take the paper, and as I walk back outside, I internally hype myself up until I'm strutting over to ECG's table. I hand him the paper, me, "Hi sir, here's the health code as you requested. As you can see here, it says we cannot allow dogs to sit in the chairs or we get a massive fine." ECG takes the paper and peers down at the rule carefully and then analyzes the whole paper as if looking for a loophole. However, he must not have found one because instead he throws the paper on the ground and says, "You can shove that up your ass." This man finally gave me a reason to drop the customer service voice, which, for the record, is very light and high-pitched. My normal talking voice is surprisingly deep and not as cheery, so I glared down ECG, dropped my register and growled, "Sir, put the dog on the ground or leave." This startled him at first, but he, being a man with an attorney and me being a short little waitress, working for pennies after all, regathers himself quickly. He scoops up his dog in his arms, stands, and then takes his heavy metal chair and flings it behind him. It goes under our railing and nearly strikes two random women walking by, and then, dear reader, the piece de résistance, he sits down on the ground with his dog in his lap. Now at this point, I've seen a lot in my service industry career. I can handle someone throwing a temper tantrum, but I cannot handle someone throwing a chair. Luckily, the two women he had very nearly assaulted know exactly what to do. They leer over him from behind the railing and begin screaming, gone full Karen for justice on this guy's ass. The more they screamed, the more he shrank, and we had attracted a small crowd of attention, and then they turned their gaze to me. Karens for justice? Oh my gosh, sweetie, are you okay? You know, we're from Brooklyn and even we find this appalling. Suddenly, I snap back to reality and realize I'd been rescued. I laugh and join a conversation with the women, with the pouting man between us. I not so subtly bemoan the immaturity and entitledness I saw on a daily basis. Overall, they were very sweet. Finally, ECG's server comes out, UEW in tow. She had been inside this whole time, completely unaware of her husband's outburst. She looks utterly horrified and ashamed. Their server lets me know the manager is on their way immediately. We file inside and all the employees crowd around a nearby window to watch as our manager goes out. ECG keeps sticking his finger in her face, speaking through gritted teeth, looking like he's about to pop a vessel, all the while UEW is mortified and our manager is bored. Finally, they leave. My manager comes back inside and tells us, "Okay, so he called me a cunt and told me to go F myself, and if he ever comes back, we are calling the police." Before we end the video, let's read one last funny story from r/pettyrevenge. It is titled, "A regular kept spoiling a show I was watching." So, I used to work in a comic shop and we had a lot of regulars who would come in every week who I got to know fairly well. There was one guy who had mentioned he liked Stargate, so one week he came in and I mentioned to him that I'd started rewatching Stargate from the very beginning. I also mentioned that I'd never seen the last 3 seasons or any of the spin-offs, so I was excited to see them. And by the way guys, let me know in the comments, what is your favorite TV show of all time? And also, what are you currently watching at the moment? Let me know. Anyway, the first thing he says is, "Oh, so you don't know about…" Spoiler alert. I was like, whoa, no spoilers! Which should have been enough, but it wasn't. Every week he'd come back and spoil it for me even more. And every week I would tell him to please not spoil it for me. This went on for about 2 months. Between the regularity of it and the smirk he'd get on his face every time I asked him not to tell me spoilers, I knew he was doing it on purpose. So then one week he came in and bought a big pile of comics he had ordered. I waited for him to pay and then, instead of begging them up, I fanned them all out on the counter. You see, I read a lot of comics, especially back then. I read every new comic that was published by Marvel and DC, and then some as they came out, so it just so happened that I had read every single comic he had just purchased. I proceed to point to each comic and spoil every single one. He didn't talk to me about Stargate after that. And yeah guys, that is textbook petty revenge. Amazing. I hope you enjoyed today's video and I will see you again tomorrow.